The really important part is to make sure that you have a very stable foundation first. It's something that a lot of websites, they somehow get through with something a little bit shaky and maybe some kind of problematic techniques on the side. But if you have a very strong foundation, if you have cleaned up every problem that you have on your website, then it's a lot easier to do the rest.
Who in the room thinks that we have something called duplicate content penalty? 1, 2, 3. That's good. Okay, so we don't have anything like that. If you have lots of duplicate content on your site, we will pick from your site a single URL which will represent that content. Okay? There's no penalty involved with it. We will just likely not serve the other URLs where you can find that content. However, if you have lots of duplicate content on your page, the users who are using your site will link differently to your URLs. And with that, you pretty much dissipate all the signals or disperse all the signals that the content might collect.
Web search is moving away from just matching individual keywords on a page to actually going a little bit further to understanding what the page is about, to going from an information machine, as we have had it over the past years with the modern search engine, is providing really good information, matching the keywords, to a knowledge machine that is understanding the concepts of what the user is looking for and trying to bring really relevant results to help them to kind of solve the issue that they have. So when it comes to moving from an information machine to becoming a knowledge machine, we've discovered that there are 3 main ingredients that are necessary to turn our search machine into something that's focusing on knowledge. The first one is obviously our algorithms, our systems have to be extremely intelligent. They have to understand more than just trying to match words on a page to the query. They have to understand a lot more. I'll go into some of those examples a little bit later on. Secondly, we've noticed that search has to become extremely personal. So not one size fits everyone, and our algorithms really have to understand what it is that the user is looking for, and one good way to do that is to understand who the user is and to understand what it is they're trying to do. And finally, an important element here is more and more people have small computers next to them. They're not searching on their desktop at home. So search has to become extremely interactive. It has to become omnipresent and more or less device independent, so that when you have your smartphone, you can get access to this knowledge anywhere, anytime. The whole move from being focused on keywords to focused on knowledge is something that's very exciting for me, because it makes you reconsider your past ideas, to think about maybe there are new metrics that you should be tracking, maybe just looking at keywords is not enough, and all of these new things, they make it exciting because you don't know from one week to the next what kind of new things are going to come out. And on top of that, we've added things like structured data, where as a webmaster you can let search engines know much more what are the concepts that your website is about, what your pages are about. Are there events on this page that could be shown in the search results specifically? Are there things that could be highlighted in the search results to make it easier for users to understand that this is a search result they would like to click on? So what is structured data? Just up until maybe last year or so, a lot of websites basically had their content like this, where all of the content was essentially just text on a page. So search engines, when they look at this content, they essentially just find a lot of words and they have to match words to try to guess what the actual meaning is here. And we're going to structured data, where essentially you have a lot more markup around the content here, but all of this markup tells us exactly what this text means. So it's no longer just a random text on this page. It's really clear that, okay, this is a review about this hotel by this person on this date, and there's a clear rating here. So what we can do with this information then is to really create a snippet in the search results that kind of includes that extra information. So as much as possible with the structured data that you put on your website, we try to improve the snippets that you see in the search results. So your rankings might not change immediately or might not change at all, but at least the search results listing will be a lot more interesting to the user. So when a user comes along and is looking for a review about this hotel and they see, okay, this person reviewed it here with 4.5 stars and maybe I even know this person, then that's something that can help you to kind of choose that result in the search results, even if it's not ranking first. Similarly, we also use this in our knowledge graph. So that's something that we show on the sidebar in the panel, for example. So for example, events are things that we pick up from structured data on websites, and we can show them here. You can click on these, and then you'll be taken to a search results page where you find out more about these events. So essentially, when someone is searching for an artist like this here, with a click on this event, suddenly your page could be showing up in the search results as well. So almost one click away from some of these top search results. We have a variety of ways that you can implement structured data on your website. Something very new that we have is a data highlighter, which is currently only available in English, but I'll show you a little bit about that because I think that's something that especially when you're working with larger websites or when you're working with clients, it's something that is really useful because you don't have to go into the website's code to actually change the content there. So, like I mentioned, one big problem that we have is that adding the structured data to a web page is sometimes very complicated in that you look at the HTML code of the page and it's really kind of messy, maybe it doesn't validate, maybe it's really hard to find the structure there, so it's really hard to say, okay, how can I put some structure into this page? And similarly, if you're working with clients or large companies, then it's not always trivial to say, I want to change all of the pages on our website and add some extra markup here and there. So there's sometimes a very long process involved with that to actually get that done. So the data highlighter is one thing that we have added, and that's available in Webmaster Tools. If you want to try that out, what you can do is just make sure that you have the English version of Webmaster Tools. At the moment, it's only for English content, so you can mark up content that's not in English, but things like the date formats, we might not pick up properly. So I wouldn't publish the content afterwards. But essentially, what you do with the data highlighter is you pick a sample page from your website, mark up all of the elements. On the side, you'll see what we pulled out. So the information that we found from this sample page. Then we have some advanced artificial intelligence algorithms that take this information here and try to combine that with the rest of your website. So essentially I can just like click on these few things and suddenly 400,000 pages have structured markup on them. And if I'm happy with that, if I think this is all okay, I can just click on publish here. And essentially what will happen is the next time we crawl these pages, we'll use these algorithms to pick out the content, and we'll treat it as if you had all of this structured data, rich snippets markup on your pages directly. So in a very quick way, you can actually try this out. It's probably not something you want to use for the long run, but especially when you see that these pages have this kind of information that you want to make available to search engines like that, then it's a really quick way to kind of activate that, try it out, and then you can take whatever time you need together with the development team to actually implement it on the pages directly if you want to do that.
So I would really focus on this. If you can put authorship markup, for example, on your site, do it. If you can put resnippet or structured data on your site, do it. It's really worth it.
For webmasters, what does that mean? Well, let's take a quick look. So essentially, when we're talking about making our search more intelligent, one of the ways that we're doing that is by using the so-called knowledge graph. And the knowledge graph is one thing that we use to take concepts like the Eiffel Tower from being just two words that are maybe used in a query to actually understanding what it is that makes the Eiffel Tower special. And the knowledge graph, to some extent, the information stays the same, but to some extent that can change as well. So this is not something that's chiseled into stone, that's created once. This is something that essentially we can pick up from your websites as well. So if we understand your websites better, for example, by using structured markup on your pages, then that's something that helps us to better understand how your content fits in together with the concepts that the user is searching for. And the more we can kind of tie those two together, the easier we'll be able to guide the user to content on your site that's matching their intents. So instead of really focusing on individual keywords, it's possible to focus on these concepts, on these entities. So from here, I can look at related artists, maybe find something about Justin Bieber if you want. You can scroll down here, and there's a lot more information here, such I mentioned, like songs, for example, which are also picked up from structured data on various pages, but also information about upcoming events. And this is information that's really has to be fairly live and recent. So this is information that we pull from your websites, for example, if you have events that are taking place, and this is something that we can pull up. We can show it here on the main search result, for example, for Justin Bieber in this case, but with a simple click, you'll be able to find out a lot more information. And suddenly your event page, for example, about something with Justin Bieber doesn't have to rank in the top 10 for Justin Bieber. It can be something very special that you just add the events markup for, and we'll be able to correlate that together.
What do you think happens if your site's robots.txt file comes back with a 500 status code? Any guesses? So, as I said, we are very, very picky about the robots exclusion protocol. We support it, we obey it, and we don't want to crawl resources that the webmaster may disallow. If the robots.txt comes back with a 500 status code, we can't know what's inside the robots.txt. We can't know if the webmaster, in the meantime, from the last cached version, disallowed something or not. And we don't want to crawl something that they disallowed. So to avoid crawling something that the webmaster don't want us to crawl, we don't crawl anything on the site. If we can't crawl the vast majority of your site or the whole of your site, then soon your website will disappear from search. So it's very good to pay attention at the status codes, especially for the robots.txt file, but not only. If we see that other resources, other URLs on the site frequently come back with 500 status code, that might mean that the server is overloaded, right? Because it can't serve the content, for example. That might mean that we have to back off from the server, crawl slower, and for example, if you have a news site, slower crawling is not that good for you because you probably publish breaking news. If you publish breaking news, that means that you want to get that content out fast as possible. So yeah, paying attention to status codes is a really, really good idea. We see it, we see issues with them quite often, and it's just not good to serve 500, for example, for the robots.txt file. Then redirect chains. It happens often, and it's completely normal that in order to get the user from URL A to URL C, you have to redirect the user through URL B, right? That's normal. Maybe you want to send a cookie, maybe you want to present an interstitial, maybe you have some other reason. It's perfectly normal. Googlebot, in most of the cases, will be able to follow that redirect, and everything will be fine. URL C will be crawled and potentially indexed. What happens if URL B is disallowed for crawling? If URL B is disallowed for crawling, that means that we may not crawl that URL, right? If we can't crawl that URL, we can follow the redirect. If we can follow the redirect, then we won't see URL C. If we can't see URL C, then we won't index it. We see a lot of questions from webmasters. So essentially we'll see questions like,
how can I get neutral search results? I want to measure my site's performance in search, and to do that, I have to have neutral search results, so something that's not affected by personalization. And more, as we personalize the results, as we bring personal information into these search results, maybe information that wouldn't even be showing up in the search results otherwise, that's something that's not going to happen. So when a user searches for something, they're going to see a lot of personalization, either based on who they are or where they're located, which device they're using. That's something where there's no simple ranking for a website anymore. So that's something to kind of keep in mind when someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to track our site's ranking for these keywords. Essentially, they're tracking something that's kind of artificial. So more and more in analytics, you'll see things like the referrer data is just not provided, not available there. Because users are coming from personalized search results, they generally don't want to give that kind of personal information to random websites. So as you go through these analytics sessions here today, I think this is something to kind of keep in mind, that more and more as search moves away from just matching keywords to a page, you're probably going to have to look for other metrics or other ways to measure your site's performance in search.